Assalamu alaikum dear students. Today we are going to discuss literature as an expression of personality. In today's lecture we'll discuss what is literature, expressing culture, literature as an expression of personality, why we read literature, literature and society, self-expression through literature, art and performance. What does a selfie tell us? What does literature have to do with our style? How can literature tell us what we value? So, first of all, we will discuss what is literature. Dear students, admittedly, there is no single definition that encompasses what literature really is, but in general, when it comes to literature, we are dealing with something that has been very consciously constructed by as an author using particular techniques and styles to express themselves. To better understand this, let's compare a work of popular fiction with a literary classic. Stephenie Meyer's Twilight series is considered popular fiction, while Bram Stoker's Dracula is seen as a literary work. So, even though both texts are about vampires, Dracula might be considered literary since the author wrote the text in a way that allows our knowledge about Dracula to develop something which suited the context in which he was writing, since vampire mythology was not as well known in the 19th century as it is today. Instead of being very explicit and direct about the nature of his vampires, Stoker mimicked that sense of these creatures as being mysterious by presenting a series of letters and diary entries alluding to their existence. In contrast with the Twilight series, readers are told about events more directly through the use of a first-person narrator. In addition, Meyer's novels are based on certain cliches, like the idea that love can overcome all obstacles. When you consider that fact that literary texts generally imply very strategic ways of communicating, then an awareness of language's potential becomes important. Literary authors have the opportunity to present their cultures, values, and ideas to others in a way that is not confrontational and which might even draw the reader in enough for them to learn more about these things. So now we'll discuss expression of culture. So with the dealing these things, we'll prove that how literature expresses someone. Culture is a term that is sometimes used to describe the social customs of a particular group of people. It's important not to generalize and stereotype people according to the customs associated with particular groups, but very often people take pride in their culture since it's often the product of a long line of history. When authors express their culture, they do so not by presenting a single value or idea, but rather by demonstrating how their values and ideas play out in daily life. One example of expressing their culture through literature can be seen in the work of Drum Decade authors. The name Drum Decade came from Drum magazine, which during the 1950s published not only the article but also short stories written by black South African authors. At the time, the country's political system enforced racial segregations, and yet despite this oppressive system, a cultural developed among the people living in informal settlements which blended the glamour of 1950s America with their own culture. As such, the drum decade authors wrote about shabeens, informal and illegal pubs, jazz, glamours, African women, men in zoot suits, as well as some of the issues plaguing the informal settlement and the country in general. By writing about this culture, these authors not only left a wonderful legacy for understanding their experiences but provided their peers with a sense of ownership over and pride in their culture. Literature as an expression of personality. As dear students, you know that we are dealing with Hudson. So in this topic we will see the things according to the Hudson. In the second part of Some Ways of Studying Literature, Hudson deals with literature as an expression of personality. He starts with the much discussed definition of literature by Matthew Arnold. Literature is the criticism of life. Obviously, literature is an interpretation of life. The writer interprets the life in his own way and gives a commentary over in his work. According to a French epigram, art is life seen through a temperament. It means that literary art is an expression of life through the temperament of the writer, and literature mirrors this temperament. The mirror the writer hold to the world is the mirror of his own personality and individuality. And hence it is necessary to study literature as an expression of personality. So Hudson says that a great book is born of brain and heart of its author. He has put himself in his pages. They partake of his life and are instinct with his individuality. Therefore, it is essential to know with the author in order to understand a work of art. We cannot understand any piece of literature unless we understand and know the first. So here Hudson suggests us to establish a personal contact with the author, as personal experience is the basis of all real literature. Hudson remembers a famous quote of Milton: "A good book is the precious life blood of a master spirit, emblemed and treasured up on the purpose of a life beyond life." Thus, literature is an expression of life, but it is essential for all to understand the life of the writer first, as literature is life blood of the author. So in order to judge great books, one must distinguish between what Carlyle calls genuine voices and mere echoes. He means to say that in great books the writer speaks for themselves, whereas in an ordinary works they speak on the report of others. We must distinguish is essential difference between the literature which draws its life directly from personality and experience, and that which draws its life mainly at second hand from contact with the personality and experience of others. Thus, the second type of literature is a Turgenev says smell of literature, but as the student of literature, the works of the fullest of original vitality area of chief concern. Now we'll deal that why we read literature. Obviously, we have discussed that literature as an expression of personality. We have dealt that expression of culture is the part of this topic, and now we'll see that why we read literature. Obviously, we are the student of literature. Then what is the need behind it that we have to deal with the literature, and why we read literature? This is the question. Literature is a vital record of what men have seen in life. what they have experienced of it, what they thought and felt about those aspects of it which have the most immediate and enduring interest for all of us. It is the interpretation of life, and life shapes itself in the mind of the interpreter. We care for literature because we care for life, because we are interested in knowing the varied aspect of it, because we like to know how men and women live life and think about life. Basically, this is the thing that we should all think about it, that why we read literature. As a being student of literature, you all must think about it, and you all should search about it, that why we read literature and how literature influence in our life. Our reading should be actual intercourse between the author of the book and ourselves. We should observe how the world of experience impressed him and how it is interpreted through his personality. While going through a book, we become familiar with the character, outlook, strength, weakness, and essence of the writer's personality. Obviously, when we deal with the books, when we deal with the literature, we have to deal with the authors too. So basically, that's the question, how the writer is dealing with the book, how the writer is dealing with the work, and how the writer is dealing with the literature. Obviously, when he or she is dealing with the literature, obviously he or she will put outlook, strength, weakness, and the essence, as well as character. There are many genres are also there. So this is the thing, that how the writer deals with the literature and how the student deals with the literature. Now Hudson says that there should be sincerity, originality, and genuineness of expressing life in great literature, as without this a literary work becomes lifeless. Nowadays, students, note down these points. Number 1, sincerity, originality, genuineness. These are the thing, that these 3 points, Hudson says that these are the point of expressing life in great literature, as without this a literary work becomes lifeless. Without these things, literary work is nothing. Hudson believes without sincerity, no vital work in literature is possible. Originality of experience makes literature far more accomplished art, and genuineness of experience imparts to literature quality of authenticity, which is visible only in great works. In this way, Hudson suggests us to penetrate as deeply as we can into the personal life of the author. So, Hudson suggests us to penetrate as deeply as we can into the personal life of the author. Obviously, while dealing with the literature, as earlier I have said that author is the thing that which you have to deal with. That obviously you have to deal with the literature, you have to deal with the work, you have to deal with the books, you have to deal with the author too. So basically that's the thing, that how you can get the things from literature. By dealing with these things, you will be able and you will be very keenly go through with these things, that how you deal with the author. Pleasure and profit are 2 motives of the reading of literature. Now there are 2 motives of reading of literature: pleasure and profit. Literature is sweet and useful. Now you can add these things in your assignment too. Literature is sweet and useful. This is the Horatian formula of dulce and utile. All art is sweet and useful to the appropriate users. What it articulates is superior to the self-induced reflections of the readers, and it gives them pleasure by the skill with which it articulates. But the pleasure of literature is higher pleasure, because it is pleasure in a higher kind of activity, non-accusative contemplation, and the utility of seriousness. The instructiveness of literature is a pleasurable seriousness, not the seriousness of a duty which must be done or of a lesson to be learned, but an aesthetic seriousness, a seriousness of perception. So this is the thing, that how you have to deal with the things. As we are dealing with Hudson, so Hudson is clearing the things very deeply and keenly. So being a student of literature, you should also deal with these things very deeply. So literature is a form of knowledge. Now this is the point, very keen point of your today's topic. Literature is a form of knowledge. Aristotle had seemed to say something like this in this famous dictum that poetry is more philosophical than history, but the prime office of a writer is not to discover and communicate knowledge. His real fiction is to make us perceive what we see, imagine what we already conceptually or practically know. Imaginative literature is a fiction, an artistic verbal imitation of life. Aristotle called this mimesis. It imitates the universal, which include the marvelous. Imaginative writers are discoverers of new perceptual values or new aesthetic qualities in things existing in in reality. The players of literature are thus derived from the discovery of these aesthetic qualities. Keats, in his poem on reading Champion's Homer, says great poetry reveals to him a new realm. It is the rediscovery of life. So dear students, literature is very vast, literature is very wide. You have to explore the thing in the literature. You will deal with the drama, you will deal with the poetry, you will deal with the fiction, you will deal with the many other aspects of the literature are there, but you should deal with these things very deeply. So the reading of literature may be profitable only. So in the last slide we deal that pleasure and profit are the two motives of the reading of literature, and now the reading of literature may be profitable. Now we are going for this thing, that how the things are profitable for being a student of literature, that how you will be deal with the things and it will be profitable for you only when it is done properly. This is the point, dear student. I am reading it again and repeating it again. The reading of literature may be profitable only when it is done properly. Literature is a complex organism and it is necessary for the readers to probe into it. A careful reading of the play Hamlet will reveal various thematic elements and how they are related. At the same time, the glorious intricacy of the design. The best literature is carefully written records of the kinds of experience that men have found significant, and literature that has endured has done so, because men in different generations and in a variety of circumstances have felt that significance. Literature as vicarious experience has one great advantage. So with this we'll say that the reading of literature may be profitable, I am repeating again, only when it is done properly. So now you have to think, you have to deal with the things, you have to see the things, that how you are dealing with the things of literature, how you are dealing with the literature, and if you are dealing properly with the literature, your literature is profitable for you, as well as for your examination point of view, as well as for your pleasure, as far as your profit. So this is the thing, that literature, you have to imitate the things from literature, and you have to copy the things from literature, and you have to put the things from literature, and you have to absorb the thing from literature, and you have to put these things into your own expressions, personality, so you can reveal the thing very easily. So now we'll discuss, obviously we are dealing with the expression of personality with the literature, so we'll deal with the literature and society too. Literature, according to Arnold's much discussed definition of it, is at bottom a criticism of life. It is a record in forms of beauty, of literary artists' impression or vision of the social life in which he lives. It is thus a reflection of life with the perfect fidelity or to truth without any preconceived object or philosophy. The supreme literary artist is he who has seen much of life and has a wonderfully varied experience of the men and women around him. This knowledge of life is fashioned into beauty by the artist's imagination, feeling, and language, and so on. Herein lays the difference between great and small literary artists. Great literary expresses in a profound and interesting manner the aspect of life which are not merely local and ephemeral but are of universal interest. So now we are dealing with the literature and society. How society depicts the literature and how literature is being depicted by society. The things are intermingled between literature and society. So literature is not history representing facts of life with truth and accuracy so that men of later generations can acquire their knowledge of the past time by the study of the literature of the time. Though literature and life are vitally linked up, mere photographic representation of life does not constitute true literature. The creative artist shares his intellectual pleasure with the readers through his artistic or imaginative presentment of the life that has moved him to his depth of feeling and thought. The world of imagination is often wrongly supposed to be one of mere abstraction of or shadows which have little to do with the life or reality, but is a world conjured up by the imagination of the artist out of the crude mass of reality and presented with true proportion and sense of beauty. So now we'll deal with the self-expression through literature, art, and performance. Firstly, we have done with the literature, culture, society. Now we'll see that how literature self-expression through literature, art, and performance. These are the things that we'll deal in this area. Narrative is a basic human strategy for coming to the terms with the fundamental elements of our experience, such as time, process, and change, and thus this a study of the distinctive nature of narrative and its various structure, elements, uses, and effects would help us in understanding the nature of identities. This course will provide a variety of critical lenses for considering the relationship between culture and narrative, focusing on the themes of nationhood, memory, intangible cultural heritage, gender, and self-identity from multiple historical, literary, and cultural backgrounds, drawing on a selection of narratives ranging from literature, theatre, cinema, popular culture, and performance from everyday life in the city, as the urban is often the most representative space for constructing and imagining new narratives of selfhood. We will consider the relevance of stories and storytelling to our daily lives, how our narratives shape the roles we play in society, and the various conventions of identity and the otherness that they reinforce or undermine. So we'll look closely at what constitutes a narrative, how narrative forms change and develop over time and between cultures, how narratives codify and subvert cultural belief, and how writers and readers use narrative to articulate their own ideologies. We will develop a vocabulary for discussing, analyzing, and writing about narratives in an academic context and also in enacting and embodying them in a theatrical performance. So as we view the text for this class, we will also be asking and constructing answer for the following question: what is a narrative? How do we problematize the fictional and non-fictional features of a narrative. How has the storytelling changed over time? This course will focus on various forms, genres, structures and strategies of narrative as a form of self-expression. So now we are dealing with the very interesting and very you can say latest and recent topic of our today's uh, society. What does a selfie tell us? Dear student, you will say that what is the role of selfie in literature? So obviously there is a role of literature in selfie because we are dealing with the expression of something by literature in personal life. So this is new and a very, you can say, advanced thing that we are dealing with the selfie in a literature. Have you ever taken a selfie? This is a question for all of you. Of course you have. Selfies are great for showing off our smiles, style and how we live. Obviously when we use mobile, we take selfies and we basically these are the things that we are showing our smiles, styles and how we live. It is easy to take a selfie and they are all over the internet, but why do we take them and so frequently? This is the question for all of you. Even though it's simple to snap a selfie, the only capture and physically selves and maybe what we are eating that day. What does a selfie say about who we are as people? For all the selfies we take, they can only partially capture what we value and what we find beautiful in life, and not a single selfie can show what we are thinking at the moment we take it. For that kind of in-depth portrait of who we are, we need something more than a selfie to demonstrate our own uniqueness to the world. By studying literature, now we are coming to our point, or even by writing our own literature, we can obtain a sense of ourselves and express ourselves more clearly than any smartphone camera ever could. So dear students, this is my point why I have put this slide in our today's lecture. I am going to repeat this again. We can by studying literature or even by writing our own literature, we can obtain a sense of ourselves and express ourselves more clearly than any smartphone camera could. So this is the thing. Through literature, we can develop better ideas about our individuals' tastes, our personal values and world view, and we can also find means for our own written and verbal self-expression. So this is the thing, we are dealing with the selfie. And why we are dealing with the selfie? This is the thing, through literature we can develop better ideas about our individual tastes, our personal values, our worldview, and we can also find means for our own written and verbal self-expression. So what does literature have to do with our style? Obviously we are dealing with the expression, so style is also the part of this question. Literature, for one, entertains us. We can see into other worlds that have been created by authors with vivid imaginations. This is the power of imagination, that how writer create the imagination and how he is saying that we can see into other worlds that have been created by authors with vivid imaginations. We can then let those alternate worlds inspire our own. Maybe we like something as small as Harry Potter's scarf, so we learn how to knit one just like it. Or perhaps we read what Ernest Hemingway wrote about Spain in The Sun Also Rises, and the book inspires us to take a backpacking adventure through the sun-drenched plateaus of Castile and the beaches of Barcelona. Regardless of what it is that inspires us, reading gives us a chance to explore our individual tastes. Knowing what we like is a big part of knowing who we are. Literature can help us to discover and confirm the best part of ourselves, as well as tell us about the things we would rather avoid. So how can literature tell us what we value? So this is the important and last aspect of our today's lecture, that how can literature tells us what we value. Personal values, obviously these are the things, are sometimes hard to articulate. When someone asks you about what matters most to you, it can be difficult to give an easy answer. Literature helps us to better understand what is in life that matters to us. As we read literature, we might find that we object to a certain character's actions, that disapproval may carry over into our own lives, or on the other hand, perhaps we have read about the feats and good deeds of a hero or heroine. Maybe we choose to emulate them a little bit in our own lives. For example, maybe we find Atticus Finch's stand against racism in To Kill a Mockingbird to be a very heroic. Our reaction to the novel tells us that perhaps uh, equality is something that is more important to us than we realized before. So reading widely make us see the big picture and how our own personal values mesh and or clash with the greater society. The values we have that we carry out in our actions demonstrate our personal worldview. Our worldview is the collection of values and opinions about the society that informs our action on a greater scale. So basically, we are dealing with the society, we are dealing with ourselves, we are dealing with our actions, we are dealing with the personal opinion, we are dealing with the selfies, we are dealing with the things, we are dealing with the culture, we are dealing with the society. By reading literature, our own worldview take us new dimensions, broadening and incorporating elements from the text we read. Having a flexible worldview in this manner keeps us engaged with development in society and in ourselves as we grow and change. So basically, this is the thing, that how literature express in someone's life and how it influences someone's life. So that's all for today's lecture. Inshallah, see you soon. Allah Hafiz.